4 things I stopped doing that resulted in unintentional weight loss. As someone who struggled with her body image since she was 11 years old and her relationship to food, these 4 things were absolutely revolutionary and went against everything I was taught by the diet industry. I hope that they are just as life-changing for you. On my channel, I share proven tools and resources to transform your relationship of insecurity and toxicity with food and your body image into confidence and freedom so you can live the life you truly deserve. So if that sounds like something you're up for, I post new videos every single week. All right, so let's dive in. Tip number 1, not even a tip, it's just a truth. I stopped high intensity interval training. This was huge for me because my entire life I was taught that more is more. So the more intense your exercise is, the better results you're going to have. And HIIT has been having a moment for a very long time. And that is actually quite a controversial topic. I want to say for certain, HIIT training probably works for a lot of people. But for me, I was doing HIIT interval training. I was also doing intermittent fasting. I was following everything that I thought was going to give me the best body I could ever dream of. And the result was that it actually led me further and further away from that. HIIT training actually really didn't work for me. I noticed that initially I had some positive changes in my body, but those were very short-lived. And after about 3 months of doing HIIT training 5-6 times a week and intermittent fasting, my body just started to crash. I actually experienced a lot of weight gain, which was very unexpected. And it was all from overuse and too much intensity. And so the biggest shift for me around exercise was learning that less is more, that I actually had to take rest days, and that I actually had to opt for exercise that was so much less intense. This was a real struggle for me because my entire life I was an athlete. I grew up doing dance and soccer, etc. I was a fitness instructor. I learned the opposite. Again, like I said, more is more. So I really had to work through those barriers of fearing that if I was going to slow down my exercise, that I was going to gain more weight, and that if I took rest days, it was going to mean I was going to gain more weight. That was a huge hurdle for me, and we'll talk more about that later. But when I really started to trust my body, I would listen, I would do low intensity workouts such as walking. At first, I just basically only walked because any type of exercise I did, I would experiment with, lifting weights and doing different things. And I found that my sleep was really bad, that I just had more anxiety, I had insomnia. So those were all cues that my body was over its threshold of stress and that I was having cortisol basically running through my body at all times. And cortisol is a stress hormone. It does encourage fat storage. So my point is that for me, the HIIT training was not working and I had to completely axe the high intensity workouts. And so if you are someone that is noticing signs like you're not losing weight, you are potentially even gaining weight and you're doing a lot of high intensity training, you find that your sleep is off, that you don't have really solid sleeps, that maybe your hunger signals are off, that you're either waking up really tired or you can't go to sleep at night because you feel really wired, then that's a sign that you probably should be changing up your exercise routine because what you're doing isn't working and actually won't lead to weight loss. Number 2, so after I switched to my exercise routines and opted for more low intensity exercises, it took me about a year of low intensity exercise, meaning like walking, Pilates, mat Pilates, not even reformer Pilates. I did yoga, I tried some bar, and once I felt my body really coming back and healing, I actually then started opting for a little bit more intensity and a little. So I started with weight training. So I would work out with weights, whether they be dumbbells, kettlebells, whatever, barbells, and I started doing weight training. I kept my workouts under an hour. I made sure that I really, again, listened to those cues from my body, and I made it a must to have rest days moving forward. And that was huge. To this day, I don't do HIIT training. And it's been about 5 years, and I won't be going back anytime soon. I found the effects of the type of training I do has been huge. Okay. Number 2, I stopped dieting and all restrictions. So this really went against everything I was taught as well. My whole life I restricted. My whole life I was afraid of food. My whole life I thought that carbohydrates were like the worst things for me. I always had rules around food. I always had anxiety around going for dinner with friends. I could never fully be present because I had so many anxieties and rules around food. And eventually this whole restriction game really just, it created the opposite effect. So again, we're taught that the more you restrict, the more weight you're going to lose, the happier you're going to be. And the truth is, that isn't the truth. The more you restrict, the more obsessed you become around food, the more anxious you become around food, the more your life gets controlled by rules around food. And your weight loss, you may lose weight at first, but it will plateau, and eventually your body is going to kick back and try to really support you to gain weight in a healthy way, because you can't be in a deficit for like your entire life. Your body is not designed to operate that way. And it's been proven that less than 2% of people who ever go on a diet actually keep the weight off, because again, we're not meant to be in a chronic restriction. So that's the other thing. Like between 55, I think it's women go on between 55 to 130 diets in their lifetime. And if that isn't madness enough, I don't know what is. So I learned how to overcome the fears I had around food, the fear that I had about gaining weight. The irony was I did gain weight from dieting and all that stuff. So I was like, I'm literally living my nightmare anyways. So dieting clearly isn't working for me. I learned instead of intermittent fasting that I had to prioritize eating a meal when I woke up. I cut out caffeine because that was another stressor on my body. So I didn't drink coffee for a long time, just drank herbal teas. Eventually got to the point where I would have like one matcha tea a day. That was really helpful. And yeah, I just learned how to really prioritize eating food. I almost made it like a game with myself to just see how much healthy food I could put on my plate. And like, I would make it almost like a challenge for me in my mindset to shift from like, did I eat too much food today to have I eaten enough? Because I got so sick and tired of all these terrible symptoms I got from dieting that I was like, well, my body obviously needs more food. So I really want to make this my priority. And ironically, getting rid of food rules completely eradicated my binging. I had terrible binge eating. I cried myself to sleep all the time, and abandoning restriction and abandoning food rules actually saved my binging. Like it was a huge part in me overcoming my binge eating. Next piece. So very, very important. I learned how to overcome all the emotional weight that was keeping me stuck. This was huge. I was so tormented by the obsession over my weight, by the obsession over restriction, by the insecurity I had about my body that was so chronic my whole life. And that is exactly what was keeping me stuck. All that mental anguish, all that energy. I know so many of you out there probably relate to this, where like you are trying to live your life, but 99.9% of your energy all day long is going to worrying about food, worrying about your calories, worrying about your weight, feeling insecure, not feeling confident, not going out with friends, or going out with friends and not being present because you're just so caught up in all of this toxicity about your body and about food. That was me. And that was what was making me sick. So I learned how to finally give up this fixation about needing to have the perfect body and needing to lose weight. And instead, I just focused on healing the inside. I've shared this before on my channel too. Like when I was younger, I was 21, I also had plastic surgery. I got breast implants because I was so insecure about my body. And that never made me more confident. It just created more issues for me. So I really learned this lesson that the more I fixated on changing my body, the more I actually created more misery. And so I must have to do this a different way. I was like, I have to learn how to overcome all this emotional pain that's keeping me stuck and controlling my life. Like my life was just washing away in front of me. So that was my biggest priority. And I will share how I did that. So step 4, what I stopped doing was fixating on the outside, and what I started doing was actually healing that emotional pain, as I said, using a technique called emotional freedom techniques. I share this all over my page on YouTube, TikTok, everywhere. Like emotional freedom techniques is what was the biggest game changer for me. This technique actually speaks to our brain in such a way that we can transform all the intensity behind all those negative thoughts that we have about our body. And when you can take away emotion and intensity from a negative thought, we actually can transform it into a neutral thought, and therefore we actually prune it out of your mind. So just like when a house plant that you have has a leaf that dies off, the first thing that they recommend is to cut that or pull that dead leaf off, because the plant is still trying to feed energy to that dead leaf, which is bogging the whole plant down. So similar to that, when you have a negative thought in your brain, it's like it's consuming so much of your energy. And when you can learn this technique to take energy away from that negative thought pattern, you're using emotional freedom techniques, that thought eventually becomes a dead thought. Like it becomes a dead leaf on a plant. And then we just pick it off and we no longer worry about it. And it becomes something that doesn't occupy space. So truly, after all the therapy, all the, CBT, psychologists, healers, everything that I tried in my lifetime, tens of thousands of dollars, including a plastic surgery and everything else that I wasted my money on, no one could help me understand how to fully overcome that inner turmoil. And once I learned EFT, and specifically the way that I learned how to apply it to my relationship with my body and food, I'd never been more free in my life. I was at my heaviest weight and I felt the most confident I'd ever been in my life. It was like, oh my God, is this Beyonce? Like seriously, like who is this girl who feels so confident in her skin? Like how dare she? Because she's, not in this conventional size. And I just felt so free. And so the result was, ironically, abandoning this fixation on weight loss and just prioritizing healing my mind, my mental health, healing my body through food, and going against everything that I ever learned. I not only became the happiest I'd ever been, the most confident I'd ever been. I not only cleared all the financial debt that I had, met the love of my life, bought a house, started a really abundant career, but my body, for the first time, I didn't feel unhappy in my body. And all of that positive energy, all of the love and compassion and the healing energy that I had towards myself and my body healed every single area of my life and also contributed to my body completely changing. That wasn't even something I was after or desired. It just was a byproduct. And that was because I alleviated all the stress that I was carrying. You could just see like pounds of inflammation that I had in my body just completely shedding away. And at this time in my life, I've never, I have a very healthy relationship with exercise. I work out less than I ever have in my life. I have lots of rest days. I still drink alcohol. I don't have any food rules. Like I am doing the opposite of what I learned my entire life. And I've never had such positive results in my life, in my body, in my weight, in my confidence, all of it. And the point is that you don't have to wait till your body changes to have this level of confidence. It all comes from in here. And the things that are keeping you stuck are those things that we are not taught. All those negative thoughts, all of the negative thoughts that you have, all the emotional weight that you're carrying is a barrier to you actually having the confidence that you want, and also a barrier to you having the body that you want. We aren't taught that, and that is what is so important to focus on. So I promise you that if you learn how to heal yourself from the inside out and you practice using EFT, that you will see miracles in your life too. Again, I share all of this on my page. If this resonates with you, share in the comments below. You're going to get through this. You will not be stuck with your relationship with your weight and body anymore. I promise you that. And if you are someone that is so ready to make a change, you're sick and tired of, this toxicity with your body and food consuming like so much of your life, and there's so much more that you're capable of, then please, oh my gosh, I offer complimentary calls. I would love to support you. You got to take your life back, and please use these resources. They changed my life, and I know they will change yours too. All the love to you.